The summer sun beat down on the small town of Riverside as two brothers stepped out of their pickup truck. After 3 years overseas, everything looked different yet strangely the same. The old diner on Main Street still had that faded red awning. Mrs. Patterson's flower shop still had those wind chimes hanging outside. But something felt off, like returning to a place that existed only in memory. Derek and his twin brother Andre had been home for exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks of their mother's cooking, sleeping in their childhood beds and trying to readjust to life without the constant noise of military life. They'd served as Marines together, deployed to the same unit, watched each other's backs through everything. When you're that close to someone, you don't need words. A look is enough. That afternoon, they decided to check out the community pool. It had been renovated while they were away, and everyone in town was talking about it. New diving boards, a water slide, the works. Growing up, they'd spent every summer there, but that was over 10 years ago. Things change. People change, or at least that's what they hoped. As they pulled into the parking lot, Derek noticed something immediately. The place was packed, families everywhere, kids running around with floaties and beach balls, but every single face was white. Not one black family, not one Latino family, nothing. He glanced at Andre, who had noticed the same thing. They'd seen this before, that uncomfortable feeling when you walk into a space and suddenly realize you might not be welcome. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Andre asked, his hand resting on the door handle. "Yeah," Derek replied, "but we paid our taxes just like everyone else. This is our town too." They grabbed their towels and walked toward the entrance. Derek had thrown on an old tank top and swim trunks, while Andre wore a Marines t-shirt he'd gotten at basic training. The shirt was faded now, worn thin from years of wear, but he kept it anyway. Some things you don't throw away. The woman at the front gate was maybe in her 50s with reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. She was chatting with another mother about sunscreen when the brothers approached. The moment she looked up and saw them, her whole demeanor changed. Her smile vanished. Her shoulders tensed. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her tone suggested she really didn't want to. "Yes, ma'am," Derek said politely. "We're here to use the pool. We have our community passes." He pulled out his wallet, showing her the laminated card they'd picked up at town hall the week before. Everything was in order. Everything was legitimate. But the woman didn't even look at the pass. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder nervously. Just wait here a moment," she stammered, then practically speedwalked toward the main building. The brothers stood there, people walking past them with curious stares. A little girl pointed at them before her mother quickly redirected her attention. Derek felt that familiar weight in his chest, the one he'd felt countless times before, the weight of being seen as a threat simply for existing. "This is ridiculous," Andre muttered under his breath. "Stay cool," Derek reminded him. "We're not doing anything wrong." Minutes passed. 5, then 10. Finally, the gate attendant returned, but she wasn't alone. She'd brought the pool manager, a thin man in his 60s with a polo shirt tucked into khaki shorts, and behind him 2 police officers. Derek's stomach dropped. They hadn't even entered the pool yet, hadn't caused any trouble, hadn't raised their voices. But here were 2 cops, hands already resting on their duty belts like they were approaching dangerous criminals. The older officer, with gray hair and a weathered face, stepped forward first. His name tag read Morrison. The other one, younger and stockier, hung back slightly. His tag said Hutchins. "What's going on here?" Morrison asked, his eyes fixed on the brothers. "Nothing's going on, officer," Derek replied calmly. "We just came to use the pool. Is that right?" Morrison's tone was dripping with skepticism. "You boys have membership here?" Boys, Derek was 30 years old, a Marine sergeant who'd led men through combat. But to this officer, he was a boy. "We have community passes," Andre interjected, holding up his card again. "We're residents. Born and raised here, actually." The pool manager, whose name Derek later learned was Mr. Pritchard, cleared his throat nervously. "Officers, I called you because these individuals were acting suspiciously." Suspiciously? Derek couldn't help the incredulity in his voice. "We walked up to the gate and showed our passes." "That's it." Morrison held up his hand. "I need you to keep your voice down. You're causing a scene." "We're causing a scene?" Andre's voice rose slightly. "We haven't done anything except try to go swimming." By now, more people had stopped to watch. Some were filming on their phones. Derek could see them holding up their devices, capturing every moment. Part of him was grateful. At least there would be evidence of what was happening. But another part of him felt exposed. vulnerable in a way that combat never made him feel. Officer Hutchins finally spoke up. "Look, this is a private facility. They have the right to refuse service to anyone." "Private?" Derek shook his head. "This is a community pool, funded by taxpayer money." "Our taxpayer money?" "That's not how it works," Morrison said firmly. "Mr. Pritchard has expressed that you don't meet the membership requirements, so I'm going to need you to leave now." "What requirements?" Andre demanded. "Show me in writing what requirements we don't meet." Mr. Pritchard fumbled with a clipboard, producing a laminated card with the pool rules. Andre snatched it from his hands, his eyes scanning the text quickly. Residency requirement? Check. Age requirement? Check. Proper swim attire? Check. There was nothing, absolutely nothing that would justify their exclusion. "There's nothing here," Andre said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Nothing that says we can't use this pool." "Son, I'm not going to tell you again." Morrison stepped closer, his hand moving toward his handcuffs. "You need to leave this property immediately or you'll be arrested for trespassing." Derek felt his heart pounding. This was insane. Completely insane. They'd served their country. They'd risked their lives. They'd come home to this, to being threatened with arrest for trying to swim in their own community pool. "We're U.S. Marines," Derek said, his voice steady despite the anger coursing through him. "We just got back from our second deployment. We've done nothing wrong. We have every right to be here." For a brief moment, Morrison hesitated. You could see it in his eyes, a flicker of something. Doubt, maybe, or recognition that this wasn't a simple situation. But then his jaw set and the moment passed. "I don't care if you're the President of the United States," Morrison said coldly. "You're trespassing on private property. Last warning." The crowd had grown larger now. Derek could hear murmurs, people whispering to each other. Some voices sounded sympathetic. Others sounded approving of the officer's actions. America in a nutshell, he thought bitterly. Andre looked at his brother, and in that look they had an entire conversation. They could leave, walk away, avoid the confrontation. They'd done it before, swallowed their pride, chosen their battles. But something about this moment felt different. They'd just spent years fighting for freedom overseas. How could they run from a fight for basic dignity in their own hometown? "We're not leaving," Derek said quietly. "Not until someone gives us a legitimate reason why we can't use a public pool in our own community." Morrison's face hardened. He reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I need backup at Riverside Pool. 2 subjects refusing to comply with lawful orders." "Lawful orders?" Andre's voice was incredulous. "You can't just make up laws." "That's it," Morrison moved forward. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Both of you, Derek's mind raced. Everything in his training told him to comply, to de-escalate. But everything in his heart screamed that this was wrong. He looked at the crowd, at the phones recording, at the children watching. What kind of example was this setting? Officer Hutchins moved to flank them from the other side. In the distance, Derek could hear sirens. More police were coming. The situation was spiraling out of control, and all they'd wanted was to go swimming on a hot summer day. This was America. This was freedom. This was what they'd fought for, apparently. The right to be treated as criminals in their own hometown, while families who looked different enjoyed the water just yards away. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, cutting through the summer air like a warning. Derek could feel his pulse racing, but he kept his breathing steady. 3 years in the Marines had taught him how to stay calm when everything around you was chaos. But this was different. This wasn't a war zone. This was supposed to be home. Officer Morrison's hand hovered near his weapon now, and Derek noticed. So did Andre. They both knew what that meant. Things could go very wrong very quickly, and they'd seen enough news stories to know how these situations sometimes ended. "Officer," Derek said, keeping his voice level and non-threatening. "Please, we don't want any trouble. We just want to understand what law we're breaking." "You're trespassing," Morrison repeated like it was the only word he knew. "And now you're interfering with police business." "How are we interfering?" "We're standing here talking to you." Another patrol car pulled into the parking lot, its lights flashing. Then another. Within minutes, there were 4 officers surrounding them. 4 officers for 2 men who just wanted to swim. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. A woman in the crowd, white, maybe in her 40s, called out, "This is wrong." They didn't do anything. Her voice trembled with either fear or anger. Derek couldn't tell which. "Ma'am, please step back," one of the new officers ordered. "No," she insisted. "I've been here the whole time. They just showed their passes. They were polite. This is racial profiling and everyone here knows it. Ma'am, if you continue to interfere, you'll be arrested too." That shut her up. But Derek saw her pull out her phone, angling it to capture everything. More phones came out. A teenage kid, couldn't have been more than 16, was filming from near the snack bar. An elderly man with a camera stood by his car. Good, Derek thought. Let them see this. Let the whole world see this. Mr. Pritchard, the pool manager, was practically wringing his hands. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but here. "Officers, maybe we should just... maybe we could..." "Sir, please let us handle this." Morrison cut him off. Then he turned back to the brothers. "Final warning. Hands behind your backs or we will use force." Andre's jaw clenched. Derek knew that look. His brother was seconds away from saying something that would make everything worse. He reached out slowly, carefully, and touched Andre's arm. Just a light touch, but it was enough. Their eyes met. "We'll comply," Derek said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "But we want everyone to know we're complying under protest. We've broken no laws." "Turn around," Morrison ordered. The brothers turned slowly, deliberately. Derek felt hands grab his wrists, pulling them behind his back. The metal handcuffs were cold against his skin, clicking shut tight enough to bite. Beside him, Andre was being cuffed by Officer Hutchins. Someone in the crowd gasped. A child asked their parent why the police were arresting those men. Derek couldn't hear the parent's response. "You have the right to remain silent," Morrison began, reciting the Miranda rights in a bored monotone, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Like this was just another day at work. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Derek tuned out the rest. He'd heard it before, seen it on TV, read about it in the news, but hearing those words directed at you, feeling the weight of handcuffs on your wrists when you've done nothing wrong, that was different. That changed something inside you. They were walked through the parking lot toward the patrol cars. People stared. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked satisfied, like justice was being served. Kids pointed. Parents pulled them away. And through it all, Derek kept his head up. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him broken. As they passed by a family setting up their chairs by the poolside, a little boy, maybe 7 or 8, looked up at his father. "Dad, why are those men in handcuffs?" The father, uncomfortable, trying to shield his son's eyes. "Don't stare, buddy. It's not polite, but what did they do?" "I don't know, just don't look." Andre caught the boy's eye for just a second. The kid looked confused, innocent. He didn't understand yet how the world worked, how you could be guilty of nothing except being in the wrong place with the wrong skin color. Give him a few more years, Derek thought bitterly. He'll learn. At the patrol car, Morrison put his hand on Derek's head, guiding him into the back seat. Standard procedure, they called it. Protection so you don't hit your head. Real thoughtful. Andre was pushed into another car. The brothers couldn't even ride together. Through the window, Derek watched the scene at the pool. People were arguing now. The woman who'd spoken up earlier was gesturing animatedly at another officer. The teenage kid was still filming. Mr. Pritchard had disappeared, probably hiding in his office. And the families in the pool, they'd gone back to swimming. Like nothing had happened. Like 2 innocent men hadn't just been arrested for trying to exercise their rights. The car pulled out of the parking lot. Morrison was driving, another officer in the passenger seat. Nobody said anything at first. Just the crackle of the police radio, dispatchers calling out codes that Derek didn't understand. Finally, the other officer, whose name tag read Rodriguez, glanced back at him. "You really a Marine?" "Yes, sir," Derek replied automatically. "Old habits. Where were you deployed?" "Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Did 2 tours. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "My brother's army. He was in Kandahar." Morrison cut in sharply. "Rodriguez, that's enough. I'm just saying, if he's military, I don't care if he's a 4-star general." He refused a lawful order. "That's that, but was it lawful?" Rodriguez's voice was quiet, hesitant. "I mean, if he had a valid community pass, are you questioning my judgment, Rodriguez?" "No, sir. I just..." Never mind, the rest of the ride was silent. Derek watched the familiar streets pass by. There was the high school where he and Andre had played football. There was the church where his grandmother used to take them every Sunday. There was the park where they'd learned to ride bikes. All these memories and now this. Now he'd remember this town as the place where he got arrested for trying to swim. The police station was a small brick building that tried to look more impressive than it was. Inside it smelled like stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Derek was processed like any other criminal. Fingerprints, photos, personal belongings in a plastic bag. His wallet, keys, phone, and his dog tags. He'd been wearing them under his shirt. Old habit from the service. The booking officer, a woman named Officer Chen, paused when she saw the dog tags. "You served?" "Still serving," Derek replied. "Just on leave." She didn't say anything, but something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe. Or sympathy. Hard to tell. She continued processing him in silence. In the holding cell, Derek sat on the concrete bench and tried to make sense of what had just happened. His mind kept replaying the scene. What could he have done differently? Should they have just left? But why should they have to leave? They had every right to be there. About 20 minutes later, Andre was brought in. The cell was small, designed for drunks and minor offenders. Two brothers who'd served their country, locked up like criminals. They sat side by side, not speaking at first. What was there to say? Finally, Andre broke the silence. "This is insane." "Yeah. We just got arrested for being black at a pool." "Yep. In 2024, apparently." Andre laughed, but there was no humor in it. Just disbelief. You know what the worst part is? I'm not even surprised. Disappointed but not surprised. Derek nodded. That was the truth of it. Deep down, some part of them had known this might happen. You grow up black in America, you learn to expect these moments. You hope they won't come. You hope things have changed. But you're never really shocked when they do. "Mom's going to lose it when she finds out," Andre said. "We need to call someone." "Get a lawyer," I already asked. They said we get one phone call after processing is complete. Hours passed. No one came to talk to them. No one explained what was happening. They were just left there, sitting in that cell, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Through the small window in the door, they could see officers going about their business. Paperwork, coffee runs, laughing at something on someone's phone. Just another day at the office. Eventually, Officer Rodriguez appeared at the door. He glanced around, making sure no one else was watching, then approached the cell. I wanted to say something." The brothers looked up at him. "This isn't right," Rodriguez continued, his voice low. "What happened today? I've seen the community pass rules. There's nothing that should have kept you out of that pool. Then why didn't you say something?" Derek asked, not unkindly. "Just curious." Rodriguez looked down at his feet. "Morrison's my training officer. If I contradict him, especially in public, I'm still on probation. I could lose my job. So you just go along with it, even when you know it's wrong?" Rodriguez struggled for words. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean much, but I am. For what it's worth, I'll include what I saw in my report." "Will it matter?" Andre asked. Rodriguez didn't answer. He didn't have to. They all knew it wouldn't. After he left, Derek leaned his head back against the wall. Somewhere outside these walls, that video was probably spreading. Their mother would see it soon if she hadn't already. His friends from the Marines would see it. The whole town would see it. And tomorrow, they'd have to figure out what to do next. How do you fight a system that sees you as guilty simply for existing? But tonight, they just sat in that cell and waited. Waited for a phone call. Waited for a lawyer. Waited for someone to admit that a mistake had been made. Waited for justice that felt increasingly out of reach. 6 hours. That's how long Derek and Andre sat in that holding cell before anything happened. 6 hours of staring at gray walls, listening to the buzz of fluorescent lights, and wondering if this was really their life now. The brothers who'd served overseas were now sitting behind bars in their own hometown. Finally, a different officer appeared at the cell door. Older guy, looked like he'd been doing this job for decades. "One of you, Derek Johnson?" Derek stood up. "That's me. You've got a visitor. Your sister posted bail for both of you." Relief washed over him. Riley. Of course it was Riley. Their younger sister, the lawyer who'd moved to the city 5 years ago. She must have driven straight here the moment she heard. They were processed out the same way they'd been processed in. Paperwork, signature, personal belongings returned in that same plastic bag. The whole time, nobody apologized. Nobody said this was a mistake. They were just released like the system had chewed them up and spit them out. Riley was waiting in the lobby and she looked furious. At 5'3", their baby sister had always been small, but right now she seemed 10 feet tall. Her eyes were blazing, her jaw set in that stubborn way that meant someone was about to get torn apart in court. "Are you two okay?" she demanded, rushing over to hug them both. "We're fine," Derek assured her. "Angry, but fine." "Good, because we need to talk now. Outside." They walked out into the parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. It would have been beautiful if Derek wasn't so tired and frustrated. Riley led them to her car, a sensible sedan that screamed, "Young professional trying to make it in the city." "Okay," she said, pulling out her tablet. "Before we talk strategy, you both need to see this." She pulled up a video on social media. Derek recognized it immediately. The pool, the confrontation. Someone had filmed the entire thing from the moment Morrison first approached them. The video had been posted 3 hours ago. The view count made Derek's stomach drop. 200,000 views. And climbing. "Riley, what?" "Keep watching," she interrupted. The video showed everything. Them being respectful, showing their passes, asking legitimate questions. Morrison being aggressive, threatening, escalating for no reason. And then the arrest, the handcuffs, the walk to the patrol cars. All of it captured in high definition. The comment section was exploding. Thousands of people weighing in, some supportive, others hateful, many just shocked. Someone had identified them from Andres Marine's t-shirt. Another person had found their service records, posted photos of them in uniform receiving commendations. "This has gone viral," Riley said simply. "Like really viral. It's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. The hashtag Marines arrested is trending. Local news picked it up an hour ago. National news is calling me for statements," Andre whistled low. "That was fast." "Welcome to the internet age," Riley replied. One person filmed something unjust and within hours the whole world knows about it. The question is, what do we do now? Derek felt overwhelmed. We just wanted to swim, Riley. This is insane." "I know." Her voice softened. "But now you have a choice. You can let this fade away, maybe pay a fine, move on with your lives. Or you can fight back. Really fight back. Because what happened to you today, it's not okay. And I have a feeling you're not the first people this has happened to." "What are you suggesting?" Andre asked. "I'm suggesting we file a federal civil rights lawsuit against the town, the police department, and that pool. I'm suggesting we make so much noise that they can't ignore this. I'm suggesting we make sure this never happens to anyone else." Derek looked at his brother. They'd been through everything together. Basic training, combat, the worst moments of their lives. And now this. One more battle, except this time it was on home soil. "What about Mom?" Derek asked. "This is going to bring a lot of attention. Protesters, media, the whole thing. She didn't ask for this." Riley's expression softened. "I already talked to her. She's the one who told me to fight. Her exact words were, 'I didn't raise my boys to back down from bullies, especially bullies with badges.'" That sounded like their mother. 60 years old and still fierce as ever. "Okay," Derek said finally. "Let's do it. But we do this the right way. Legal, organized, no violence." "Agreed," Andre added. "We're not giving them any excuse to paint us as the bad guys." Riley smiled, and it was the smile of a lawyer who'd just gotten exactly what she wanted. "Good. Because I already started the paperwork." Over the next 48 hours, Derek watched his life turn into something he barely recognized. The video kept spreading. News vans showed up at his mother's house. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends from the Marines were calling, texting, checking if he was okay. Some wanted to drive down, stand with him. Others were sharing the video, adding their own stories of discrimination. But it wasn't just support. The hate messages started rolling in too. People calling him a troublemaker, saying he should have just followed orders, claiming this was all made up, that he was playing the victim. Someone found his address and posted it online. His mother had to disconnect her landline because of threatening calls. This was the reality of going viral. The good, the bad, and the ugly all at once. Riley set up a meeting with several local activists and a representative from a national civil rights organization. They met at a community center on the other side of town, away from the cameras and reporters. About 20 people showed up. Some were black, some white, some Latino. All of them had stories. An older woman named Mrs. Patterson spoke first. "That pool has been keeping people like us out for 40 years. They went private in the 60s just so they wouldn't have to integrate. Everyone in the black community knows it. We learned to avoid it. Go to the city pool instead, even though it's farther. Why didn't anyone fight it? Derek asked. Mrs. Patterson looked at him sadly. Baby, we did. Back in '68, my uncle tried to swim there. They arrested him too. Beat him pretty bad. He spent a week in the hospital. The case went nowhere. After that, people were too scared. Other stories came out. A Latino family turned away 5 years ago. A black teenager escorted off the property last summer. All of them told the same thing: leave quietly or face consequences. The police always backed the pool. The town always looked the other way. This is bigger than just us, Andre said quietly to Derek later that night. They were sitting on their mother's porch watching the street. A news van was still parked at the corner, hoping for a statement. The brothers had been avoiding cameras, letting Riley handle the media. I know, Derek replied, but I'm not sure I signed up for this. To be the face of some movement. None of us sign up for the moment history picks us. But when it comes, what choice do we have? Walk away? Derek didn't answer. He knew Andre was right, but knowing something and being ready for it were two different things. By day 3, the story had reached the national news. A major network did a segment on it during their evening broadcast. They interviewed legal experts who said the arrest was clearly unlawful. They dug into the pool's history, found documents showing the 1964 transition to private ownership specifically to avoid integration laws. They interviewed locals, getting a mix of opinions that showed how divided the town was. The mayor finally released a statement. It was carefully worded, saying the town took all allegations seriously and would conduct a thorough investigation. It said nothing about the brothers' innocence. It made no apologies. Just corporate speak designed to say everything while meaning nothing. Riley scoffed when she read it. Translation: we're going to wait for this to blow over and hope everyone forgets. Will they forget? Derek asked. Not if we keep pushing. I've filed the preliminary paperwork for the lawsuit. I'm also requesting a Department of Justice investigation, and I've contacted every veterans organization I can find. When you arrest Marines for trying to swim, veterans tend to get angry. She wasn't wrong. By the end of the week, veterans groups had issued statements. Some were organizing protests. A few former Marines who'd served with Derek and Andre announced they were driving down to show support. One of them, a guy named Thompson from their old unit, started a crowdfunding campaign to help with legal fees. It raised $10,000 in 2 days. The pressure was building. The town couldn't ignore it anymore. Morrison and Hutchins were placed on administrative leave, though the police chief insisted it was standard procedure during an investigation and didn't indicate guilt. Derek finally agreed to do one interview. A respected journalist from a major news network, someone Riley trusted to tell the story fairly. They set it up at a neutral location, just Derek and Andre sitting in chairs, no dramatic lighting or music. Just two brothers telling their truth. The reporter asked straightforward questions. What happened that day? How did it feel? What do you want people to know? Derek tried to stay calm, stick to the facts. But when the reporter asked, after serving your country overseas, how does it feel to be treated like this in your own hometown? Something broke inside him. I've been shot at, Derek said, his voice shaking slightly. I've seen friends die. I've done things in war that I'll carry with me forever. And I did it all because I believed in something. Freedom, justice, the idea that in America everyone is equal. But when I come home and can't even swim in a public pool without being arrested, it makes me wonder what I was fighting for. The interview aired that night. The clip of Derek's answer was played over and over on social media. It struck a chord. Here was a decorated veteran, someone who'd sacrificed for his country, expressing the pain of discrimination. It was hard for even critics to dismiss. That's when things really started to change. The protesters showed up in force, not violent, not destructive, just hundreds of people, many of them veterans, marching to the pool with signs. Justice for the Marines. Swimming while black isn't a crime. Riverside shames our veterans. Derek and Andre watched the protest on the news from their mother's living room. They hadn't organized it, hadn't asked for it, but here were all these people standing up for them, demanding change. We started something, Andre said softly. Yeah, Derek agreed. Now we have to see it through. 3 weeks after the arrest, Riley called with news. The Department of Justice is opening an investigation, and we've been granted full discovery in the civil suit. That means we get access to everything. Police records, the pool's membership files, internal communications, all of it. Derek felt a surge of something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. What are we looking for? Patterns, Riley explained. We need to prove this wasn't just two rogue officers having a bad day. We need to show systematic discrimination. And trust me, if it's there, we'll find it. The legal team Riley assembled was impressive. 3 other lawyers, 2 paralegals, and a private investigator who specialized in civil rights cases. They set up a makeshift office in Riley's hotel room, turning it into a command center with boxes of documents, laptops, and a whiteboard covered in timelines and connections. The first breakthrough came from the pool's membership records. The investigator, a sharp woman named Carol, presented her findings to the group. In the last 20 years, Riverside Pool has had 3,412 members. Guess how many were black? How many? Derek asked, though he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. 0, not a single one, and only 18 Latino families, all of whom didn't renew after their first year. When I interviewed some of them, they said they felt unwelcome. Hostile stares, their kids being followed around by staff. Comments about those people loud enough to hear. Andre shook his head in disgust. 20 years. Not one black member. It gets worse, Carol continued. I found incident reports. 57 times in the last decade, the police were called to remove suspicious individuals from pool property. Want to guess the demographics? She didn't wait for an answer. She pulled up a chart. 43 of those incidents involved black individuals, 12 involved Latinos, 2 involved Asian families, 0 involved white people. They've been doing this for years, Riley said, her voice tight with anger. Getting away with it because nobody fought back. Nobody had the resources or the platform to make noise. But the most damaging evidence came from the police department's own records. Officer Morrison had a file full of complaints. Racial profiling, excessive force, inappropriate comments, 17 formal complaints over 12 years, and not a single one had resulted in discipline beyond a written warning. One complaint particularly stood out. 5 years ago, Morrison had pulled over a black doctor for driving erratically. The doctor's car had a dash cam. The footage showed he'd done nothing wrong. Morrison had made him sit on the curb for 40 minutes, running his license over and over, searching the car without cause. The doctor filed a complaint. Morrison got a 3-day suspension, paid. That was it. This guy is a walking lawsuit waiting to happen, one of Riley's colleague attorneys said. The real question is why the department kept him on. The answer to that came from internal emails they obtained through discovery. The police chief had defended Morrison multiple times, calling him a dedicated officer who doesn't back down. Reading between the lines, it was clear Morrison was kept around because he was willing to do the dirty work that other officers avoided. There was an email from 3 years ago where the chief wrote to the mayor, "We've had complaints about Morrison's methods, but he's effective at keeping certain elements out of areas where they don't belong. I recommend we keep him on traffic and patrol duty where his assertiveness can be useful." Certain elements. Everyone knew what that meant. Riley scheduled depositions. First up was Mr. Pritchard, the pool manager. In the conference room under oath with a court reporter typing every word, Pritchard squirmed like a fish on a hook. "Mr. Pritchard," Riley began, her tone professional but sharp. "In your 15 years as pool manager, how many black members have you approved?" I don't keep track of race. The records show 0. Not one black member in 15 years. Do you dispute that number? If that's what the records show, why do you think that is? Pritchard shifted in his seat. I can't speak to why individuals choose not to apply, but the Johnson brothers did apply. They had valid community passes. Why did you call the police? They were... I felt uncomfortable. Uncomfortable about what specifically? They didn't seem like they belonged. Why didn't they seem like they belonged, Mr. Pritchard? Long pause. Pritchard's lawyer whispered something to him. I'd like to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights, Riley smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You're invoking your right against self-incrimination? Interesting choice. The deposition of Officer Morrison was even more revealing. He showed up with his union rep and a lawyer, both of whom kept trying to limit his answers. But Morrison had a temper, and Riley knew exactly how to push his buttons. Officer Morrison, you've been with the Riverside Police Department for 16 years. Is that correct? Yes. And in that time you've made over 200 arrests, correct? If that's what the records say. Of those arrests, approximately 68% were of black individuals. Does that sound right? I arrest criminals. I don't care what color they are. But 68% is significantly higher than the black population of Riverside, which is only 12%. How do you explain that disparity? Black people commit more crimes. That's not racism, that's statistics. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, trying to get him to stop talking, but Morrison kept going. Look, I know what you're trying to do here. You're trying to make me out to be some racist villain, but I'm just doing my job. I keep the peace. I protect the good people of this town from troublemakers. Troublemakers like Derek and Andre Johnson? Two decorated Marines who wanted to swim? They were trespassing. On what grounds? They had valid community passes. The pool manager said they didn't belong there. And you took his word without question? Without checking their passes yourself? Without verifying that any actual law was being broken? Morrison's jaw clenched. He's the property manager. He has the right to refuse service, even if that refusal is based on race. I never said anything about race. But you were wearing a body camera that day, weren't you, Officer Morrison? His face paled slightly. Yes. And that camera was recording? Yes. Then you'll be interested to know that we've obtained that footage through discovery. And on that footage, before you even approach my clients, you can be heard saying to Officer Hutchins, and I quote, "We need to keep this place the way it's supposed to be." What did you mean by that? Silence. Morrison looked at his lawyer, who shook his head sharply. Officer Morrison, I asked you a question. I meant, the pool has rules, standards. Standards about what? Be specific. I'm not answering that. Because the answer would incriminate you? More silence. Morrison's face was red now, a vein pulsing in his forehead. Riley leaned back. No further questions. For now. After the deposition, Riley was energized. We've got them. The body camera footage alone is damning. Add in Morrison's disciplinary record, the pool's membership demographics, the pattern of police calls. This case is airtight. But Derek didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. Watching Morrison sit there, defensive and angry, refusing to admit what everyone in that room knew he'd done. It was exhausting. Will anything actually change? He asked Riley later that evening. What do you mean? Say we win. Say we get a settlement. Morrison gets fired, the pool has to integrate. Will it actually change anything? Or will they just find new ways to keep people out? Riley sat down next to her brother. I don't know, she admitted. Honestly, I don't. Legal victories don't automatically change hearts. But they change systems. They create accountability. They make it harder for the next Morrison to get away with what he did. That's not very reassuring. No, she agreed. But it's the truth. Change is slow, Derek, frustratingly slow. But every lawsuit, every protest, every video that goes viral, they add up. They build pressure. And eventually the dam breaks. The media coverage intensified as more evidence became public. News outlets ran stories about Morrison's complaint history. The pool's discriminatory membership records made headlines. Op-eds debated the case, with most legal experts agreeing the brothers had been wronged. The town of Riverside was splitting apart. Some residents were mortified, ashamed that this had happened in their community. They joined the protests, calling for reform. Others doubled down, defending Morrison and the pool, insisting this was all blown out of proportion. There was a town hall meeting that turned ugly. People shouting at each other, accusations flying. One woman stood up and said she'd lived in Riverside her whole life and never seen racism. A black man in his 70s stood up and listed a dozen incidents of discrimination he'd personally experienced. The mayor, looking overwhelmed, tried to call for calm but had no control over the room. Derek and Andre watched a clip of the town hall on the news. We broke something, Andre said. This town has been holding all this in for decades, and we cracked it open. Is that good or bad? Both, maybe? Can't heal a wound if you pretend it's not there. Meanwhile, the legal process ground forward. Settlement negotiations began. The town's lawyers tried to lowball them, offering a small amount and no admission of wrongdoing. Riley laughed in their faces. My clients aren't interested in hush money, she told them. They want accountability, full policy reform, an independent review board for police complaints, mandatory bias training. public apology, and yes, appropriate financial compensation. The negotiations dragged on for weeks, back and forth, offers and counteroffers. The town was bleeding money in legal fees and bad publicity. Tourism was down. Businesses were struggling. The pressure to settle grew. Finally, they got serious. The town's lawyers came back with a real offer: money, reform, oversight. Most importantly, the pool would lose its private status. It would become truly public, with open membership and regular audits to ensure compliance with civil rights laws. Riley presented the offer to her brothers. It's not perfect, but it's significant. Real change, not just words. Derek and Andre looked at each other. That twin communication happening without words. 6 months after that summer day when all they wanted was to swim, Derek and Andre stood outside the riverside pool once again. But this time was different. This time, they were invited. The settlement had been finalized 3 weeks earlier. $2.5 million, split between the brothers and a community fund for civil rights education. Officer Morrison and his partner Hutchins were terminated, facing federal civil rights charges. Mr. Pritchard was gone too, replaced by a new management team committed to genuine inclusion. But money and firings weren't the real victory. The real victory was what was happening today. The pool was reopening under new ownership and a new name. Unity Community Pool, the sign read. No more private membership. No more unwritten rules. Just a public pool, open to everyone in the community. They'd hired a diverse staff. They'd put up signs in English and Spanish welcoming all families. They'd even started a scholarship program to provide free swimming lessons to underprivileged kids. A small stage had been set up for the reopening ceremony. Local officials, community leaders, and a crowd of several hundred people gathered. Derek spotted faces he recognized. Mrs. Patterson, who'd shared her uncle's story from the 60s. Carol, the investigator, some of his old friends from high school. And there, sitting in the front row with tears in her eyes, was his mother. The mayor approached the microphone first. He was a different man than the one who'd issued that carefully worded statement 6 months ago. The pressure from this case had nearly cost him his job. He'd survived a recall petition by a narrow margin, and it had humbled him. 6 months ago, the mayor began, his voice shaking slightly. Something happened in our town that should never have happened. 2 men, 2 veterans who'd served our country with honor, were denied access to a public facility and arrested for no legitimate reason. What happened to Derek and Andre Johnson was wrong. It was unjust. And on behalf of the town of Riverside, I apologize. There was scattered applause, but also some boos from the crowd. The town was still divided. Healing would take time. But an apology isn't enough, the mayor continued. Which is why we've implemented comprehensive reforms. Independent oversight of our police department. Mandatory training on bias and de-escalation. Regular audits of all public facilities to ensure equal access. And this pool, which has stood as a symbol of division for too long, will now stand as a symbol of unity. He stepped aside, and Riley took the microphone. She'd been asked to speak on behalf of her brothers, though they'd ultimately decided they wanted to say something themselves. Change doesn't happen because people in power suddenly become enlightened, Riley said. It happens because ordinary people refuse to accept injustice. My brothers could have walked away that day, avoided confrontation, stayed silent. But they stood their ground, and in doing so, they exposed a truth this town had been hiding for decades. She gestured to Derek and Andre. These men served overseas. They risked their lives for freedom, but they shouldn't have had to earn the right to be treated with dignity. That right belongs to everyone, simply because they're human. Today isn't just about a pool reopening. It's about a community choosing to be better. When Derek and Andre took the stage together, the applause was louder. But Derek could also hear a few jeers from the back of the crowd. Not everyone was happy about this. Some people thought they were troublemakers who'd made a big deal out of nothing. That hurt, but he'd learned to accept it. We didn't want to be here today, Derek said into the microphone. Not like this anyway. We just wanted to swim, cool off on a hot day. That's it. But when we were denied that simple right, we had a choice. Walk away and let injustice continue, or stand up and demand better. He paused, looking out at the crowd. Some people think we should have just left that day, that we were looking for trouble. But here's what I learned serving in the Marines. Freedom isn't free. Not just overseas, but right here at home. Every generation has to fight to protect it, to expand it, to make it real for everyone. Andre took over. This pool has a history, a bad history. For decades, it kept people out based on the color of their skin. Today, that changes. Not because the people in power suddenly had a change of heart, but because they had no choice. Because videos went viral. Because protesters showed up. Because veterans rallied. Because lawyers fought. Because ordinary people said, enough. He looked at his brother, then back at the crowd. This is what democracy looks like. Messy, uncomfortable, sometimes painful. But ultimately it works. Not perfectly, not quickly, but it works. And every small victory, every barrier broken down, makes it easier for the next person. That's what we hope comes from this. Not glory for us, but a better path forward for everyone. The ceremony continued with other speakers, including a representative from a veterans organization and a young girl who'd be part of the new swimming scholarship program. Finally, it was time to cut the ribbon. Derek and Andre were handed oversized scissors. The bright blue ribbon stretched across the pool entrance fluttered in the breeze. Cameras flashed. People crowded in for a better view. Ready? Derek asked his brother. Let's make this count, Andre replied. Together they cut through the ribbon and the crowd erupted in applause. The entrance was officially open. Families immediately started streaming in, kids running toward the water with excitement. For the first time in decades, the pool reflected the actual diversity of Riverside. Derek and Andre had agreed to swim today to make it official. They changed into their swim trunks and walked to the pool's edge. The water was crystal blue, inviting. All around them, children were laughing, parents were setting up chairs, lifeguards were taking their positions. It was such a simple, ordinary scene, and that was exactly what made it extraordinary. They dove in together, the cool water washing over them. When they surfaced, Andre was laughing. We did it. We actually did it. Yeah, Derek agreed, floating on his back and staring up at the summer sky. We did. Later, as the brothers sat on the pool deck drying off, a teenage boy approached them hesitantly. Derek recognized him immediately. The kid who'd been filming that day 6 months ago, catching everything on video. Hey, the kid said nervously. I don't know if you remember me, but I was there that day. I recorded what happened. I remember, Derek said. Thank you for that. Your video made a difference. The kid looked down at his feet. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. For not speaking up. For just standing there filming instead of doing something. Andre shook his head. You did exactly what we needed you to do. You documented the truth. Sometimes that's the most important thing. I got hired here, the kid said, brightening a little. As a lifeguard. The new management wanted to hire people who believe in what this place is supposed to be now. I want you to know I take that seriously. Everyone's going to be treated right here. I'll make sure of it. After he walked away, Derek felt something shift inside him. That kid represented something important. The next generation, watching, learning. Maybe they'd do better. Maybe they'd continue the work. Over the following weeks, Derek and Andre found a new normal. The media attention faded, which was a relief. They weren't celebrities or activists. They were just two guys who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe the right place at the right time, depending on how you looked at it. The settlement money sat in their bank accounts, untouched. Neither of them felt right spending it on themselves. They'd given a significant portion to civil rights organizations. They'd set up a scholarship fund for local black students. The rest was earning interest while they figured out what to do with it. Derek went back to the Marines. His leave was over and he had another tour scheduled. The night before he shipped out, he drove past Unity Community Pool one last time. It was evening, almost closing time. Through the fence, he could see a mixed group of teenagers horsing around in the water. Black kids, white kids, Latino kids. Just kids being kids. That's what this was all about, he thought. making sure the next generation didn't have to fight the same battles, making sure they could just be kids, swimming in a pool, without it being a political statement. Andre decided to stay in Riverside. He'd been offered a job with a local veterans organization, helping other former service members transition back to civilian life. It felt right. Using his experience to help others, Riley moved her practice closer to home, setting up an office in Riverside. She'd discovered she had a passion for civil rights law, and there was plenty of work to do. The Johnson case had opened floodgates. Other people who'd experienced discrimination were coming forward, emboldened by the brothers' victory. Their mother was proud, though she wished none of it had ever been necessary. "I raised you boys to stand up for yourselves," she told them. "But I never thought you'd have to do it like this. That's my failure, I guess, believing things had changed more than they had." "It's not your failure, Mom," Derek assured her. "Things had changed. Just not enough. But they're changing more now. Because of what happened, this town is different. Not perfect, but different," she hugged him tight. "Just promise me you'll be safe out there, both overseas and here at home." He promised, though they both knew some promises were hard to keep. A year later, Derek came home on leave again. The first place he went after hugging his mother was Unity Community Pool. It was late afternoon on a weekday, so it wasn't crowded. He bought a pass at the gate, no hassle, no questions, just a friendly smile from the attendant. He found a spot on the pool deck and just watched for a while. An elderly black couple was teaching their granddaughter to swim. A white family was having a birthday party under the pavilion. 2 Latino teenagers were practicing dives off the board, and overseeing it all, a diverse team of lifeguards that included that kid who'd filmed everything. This is what victory looks like, Derek thought. Not dramatic, not flashy. Just people living their lives, exercising rights that should have always been theirs. Andre showed up a few minutes later, waving when he spotted his brother. They sat together in companionable silence, watching the swimmers. "You know what's weird?" Andre said finally. "We're kind of famous around here now. The Marines who integrated the pool. People recognize us, want to talk. But most days I just feel like me, just a guy living his life." "That's the point, though, isn't it?" Derek replied. "We shouldn't have to be heroes. We should just be able to exist." Yeah, exactly. They sat there until the pool closed, neither of them swimming that day. They didn't need to prove anything anymore. The water was there, open to everyone. That was enough. As they walked to their cars, Andre looked back at the pool one last time. "Think we made a difference?" Derek considered the question. "I think we started something. Other people will have to continue it." "But yeah, we made a difference. For this town, at least." "Good," Andre said. "That's something. It was something. Not everything. Not a complete solution to centuries of injustice. But it was progress. Real tangible progress. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. One pool, one town, one small victory at a time. Until eventually, piece by piece, the world becomes a little more just." The brothers got in their separate cars and drove home. The summer sun setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles. But tonight, they could rest knowing they'd stood their ground when it mattered. They'd fought not with violence, but with truth. And in the end, truth had won. Not because truth always wins. Sometimes it doesn't, but this time in this place it had. And that was worth everything.